Hello and welcome to News 9. I'm joined here today by the former CNC Southern Naval Command, Admiral Karve. Admiral Karve, welcome to News 9.
Thank you so much for having me on this program.
Admiral Karve, India is in the middle of a transformation of its defense industrial capacity. You're creating an Atmanirbhar which is a self-sufficient India in terms of defense production. What is the role of the Navy in Atmanirbhar given the fact that the Navy has been at the forefront of defense indigenization?
As you rightly said, the Indian Navy was the lead and took this lead many decades ago in becoming Atmanirbhar in defense. In fact, if my memory proves me right, today the Indian Navy has 40 plus ships on order, warships on order, and all of them are with the defense public sector companies or establishments in our country. That itself shows that Indian Navy has stopped being import dependent as far as major platforms such as destroyers, frigates, corvettes, etc. is concerned. And this whole exercise started long back in the 1960s when the first INS Nilgiri was constructed at Mazgaon Dock Limited. And I salute our naval planners who actually laid the foundation of Atmanirbharbharat way back in the 1960s, and subsequent leadership has taken it to where we are today.
Absolutely. So you always talk about the Navy, turning from a buyer's Navy to a builder's Navy, as you put it with the INS Nilgiri, the process which began a half a century ago. Do you see India becoming an exporter's Navy in the near future?
I very much am in agreement with that. We are actually already exporting some, I would say not warships, but patrol craft, certainly. And day is not far when we will be able to export full-fledged warships of the type of frigates and even bigger ships if the government policy permits. But I feel that we do have the capacity, and perhaps we just need to increase the capacity building of some of our yards. But it is very well within our reach to do that, to reach some kind of export potential in warships.
Admiral Karve, the Navy is famous for operating ships which have subsystems from various countries. Like you would have, say, an Israeli radar, you'd have Russian missiles, Ukrainian gas turbines, and it's of course our ingenuity to put all this together and make the ships that we do. But given the kind of supply chain disruptions that you see in the world today, because you're seeing unprecedented warfare of the kind that's not been seen since the Second World War, what do you think the Navy should do or is already doing to insulate us from these kind of global disruption?
That's a very pertinent question. And just to put it in perspective, when we talk of a warship, there are three components: float, to move, to fight.
Yes.
And as you would have observed yourself, the float component of a warship today, I think, is a very high indigenous content, nearly maybe 90 plus, 95%. As far as the move component is concerned, where you talk of the gas turbines from Ukraine, etc. Yes, indeed, where the gas turbine is concerned, these were of Russian and Ukrainian origin. But today we have diversified, and we now are fitting gas turbines, the LM 2500, which is General Electric manufactured. And I think in time to come, they will be indigenously manufactured. But yes, the gas turbine is a very complex machine. There is still some way to go before we can achieve complete indigenization of that. But the process is on. What we call the marine gas turbine, which is the GTRE, the Gas Turbine Research Establishment in Bangalore, has been at it for some years now. There are challenges, Not many countries in the world are able to develop a very reliable and robust engines which are required for warship. But I'm sure that will happen with the kind of importance being given to these high-tech projects by the government. But till then, yes, we do have to rely on imported turbines. And in the past, we did have ships using steam propulsion. And I'm happy to say that as far as steam propulsion is concerned, there was a very high indigenous content in that. The boilers were being made in India by our dockyards, even the turbines. But the gas turbine has eluded us so far, and that will happen in due course. As far as the diesel engines are concerned, they are being manufactured in India with transfer of technology. Some companies are manufacturing. But yes, so as far as propulsion is concerned, the move component is concerned, I would say we are around 60%, 50 to 60%. And the last component is the fight component. You mentioned the radars are Israeli missiles as well. This is an area which requires a lot of work, and that is already happening with DRDO committing to develop all these systems, and industry is pitched into manufacture based on transfer of technology. BEL is the lead, I would say, the lead defense PSU, which is involved in making these the fight components, and BDL does the weapon systems, the BEL does the radar systems. So much has happened, but I would say we still have some way to go as far as the fight component is concerned. So that's where we stand today, and I'm sure with this kind of Atmanirbhar initiative, these figures will improve in the future.
So, one of the conundrums again is that while we have, mastered the art of shipbuilding in the military sphere, we're still behind the world when it comes to commercial shipbuilding. And there are a lot of countries which have synergized their civilian and military capabilities and leveraged their capabilities to be equally successful in both. Now, the government has realized the fact that we are deficient in that, which is why you're talking of 1,000 merchant ships to be added
1,000 merchant ships, yes,
in a decade.
Yes.
What do you think, as a naval commander who's actually been a key decision maker also, what are the lessons that you could learn from defense shipbuilding for civilian industry?
Actually, in the defense, the main difference, I would say, firstly, is that defense shipbuilding, the cost component really does not come into play to that extent as it does in commercial. In commercial shipbuilding, the owner places an order on the shipyard that can manufacture a ship or build a ship within his cost and time constraints. And I think that is where some of our commercial shipyards are not able to compete, because the owner is free to go and place his order for a ship on any yard in the world. And he would naturally want to go to a yard which is cost and time competitive. Whereas in warship building, our defense PSUs, the Navy has always placed reliance on our defense PSUs. They have delivered. There have been issues on time constraints. So I would say that commercial and warship building, construction, delivery, they are slightly different from each other. Commercial ships are guided more by the owner's concerns of time and cost.
But do you see a lot of spin-offs if you had a very vibrant manufacturing in shipbuilding process in the civilian sector, which would obviously in numbers, they would be far greater than military shipyards, obviously. Do you see a lot of spin-offs from commercial civilian shipbuilding coming into the defense sphere?
Yes, certainly, absolutely. And one of the biggest spin-offs will be the skilled manpower, because, for example, just to weld the steel on a ship is the same kind of welders which are required in both industries. So the commercial shipbuilding industry and the warship building industry require skilled manpower more or less of the same type. And therefore, commercial shipbuilding we should have taken a lead. There are several constraints, and everybody is well aware of those constraints, why shipbuilding in India is not at that level as what you find in some of the East Asian countries like South Korea, Japan, and China.
You know, when you were CNC South, you actually saw the new INS Vikrant,
Yes.
being built right before your eyes. What are the lessons from that in terms of creating a defense ecosystem, primarily with a lot of MSMEs?
You're absolutely right. I think one of the most important lessons that one can learn by visiting Cochin Shipyard is the kind of the ecosystem of MSMEs they have created for supply to Cochin Shipyard for small items like piping, electrical fittings, the air conditioning. Everything is outsourced. So many of these activities are outsourced and they are handheld by the Cochin Shipyard. And surprisingly, most of them are in Kerala and in South India. Except for the major items, as we said, the fight component and the propulsion components, most of the items are indigenous. Vikrant, such a big complex ship, has been built with a massive indigenous content. And most of that has come from MSMEs. And we must be very proud that Cochin Shipyard has actually nurtured these MSMEs. And I think they will be here for as long as the ship is in service, maybe 50 years. So the equipment supplied by those MSMEs to the ship will have to be maintained by those MSMEs. So those MSMEs are in business for as long as the ship is in service. So it's a partnership for the MSME.
It's a partnership, and why do you say MSMEs are so important for the defense ecosystem?
MSMEs are actually, you see it in most other countries. How do warships get built? You have a lead integrator. For example, Mazgaon Dock is a lead integrator. They have their own vendor base who supply them the various components, assemblies, and systems that go into building the ship, the warship. And there are multiple and millions of such equipment and small components that are required to build. So the shipyard actually integrates the whole thing based on a design given by the Navy. MSMEs are the backbone. They are the ones who actually focus on developing the small components and supplying to the shipyard based on the specifications given by the shipyard and the Navy. So when you build a warship worth 9,000 crores, which is approximately the cost of one destroyer, I would say the MSME business generated is nearly 50%. So it's a very huge business, and the shipyard doesn't rely only on big companies for supplying its equipment. It may rely on a radar to be supplied by BEL. It may depend on the BDL or some other agency to supply the missile launchers. But when it comes to the smaller, like transformers or pumps or motors and so on and so forth, this is all from the MSMEs, the small companies. So there's a huge business opportunity, and it creates an ecosystem for every kind of MSME.
There you had it, the MSMEs, the backbone of Atmanirbhar Bharat. Thank you very much, Admiral Karve, for your thoughts
Thank
and
you
your
so
time.
much for having me.